Today I'm going to be talking about Roary the Race Car, my first time watching it, and what I thought about it. Now, if there's some reason you haven't heard of Roary the Race Car, it's a British show that started in about 2007, created by David Jenkins. Or, well, if you're in the UK, it started around 2007. If you're like me and you're from America, it didn't start till around 2009. Now, I don't know if I can say it was a particularly popular show because, well, it did come out a bit late, and compared to everything else at the time, like Bob and Thomas, I don't think it was as popular as them, but saying it didn't have any popularity would be an understatement. The series stars Roary, well, obviously, with a bunch of other race cars who live at the Silver Hatch racetrack. Now, even before I actually started watching the series, I still kind of knew who Roary the Race Car was, although I've never watched an episode of it until probably the last couple weeks ago. And I have quite a few things to say about it. And I'll just start simple. I actually kind of like the series. I think it's actually pretty good. But before I start looking into individual episodes I've watched, let's go over some notable stuff, I guess. Now let's get one thing out of the way. This is both a stop motion and a CGI series, which is actually kind of a cool concept, since it kind of contrasts the stop motion going to full CGI sort of thing. Where here, it's mostly the characters and models being stop-motion props, but with elements like the background and set being pretty much CGI, which, surprisingly doesn't look bad. It actually looks pretty good for the time it's from, so that's pretty neat. Alright, here's another thing that isn't really that related to the series, but I thought I'd mention it, but this series has a lot of stupid and funny frames on it. Literally, sometimes we'll pause and we'll see the stupidest frame imaginable. I have a few screenshots of just some of the funniest ones, and they're pretty just stupid, but I love them. Oh yeah, Big Chris in the US dub is voiced by Carrie Shell, so when he sings the intro on it, he sounds like both James and Henry, in the US anyways, which is, once I hear it, I can't unhear it.
Roary the Racing Car! Roary, my #1 star!
Shit, I need to stop fucking around and finally look into all the episodes of this goddamn series. The first episode I'm reviewing is also the first episode of the entire series, Roary's First Day. The episode starts with Roary having a nightmare about crashing during the big race. Uh-oh. Big Chris notices this and decides to tell Roary a story about his first day. In this flashback, we see Roary being welcomed to Silver Hatch. But because Roary is young or something, I'm not actually sure, he thinks that he'll never be a good racer. This is then when we get to see Cece, who encourages Roary and lets him know that he can be a good racer. But even with the extra encouragement he's given, he is still nervous. Are you serious? But thankfully, Big Chris gives him some more confidence too. Both then go inside the garage to give him some modifications. Cece shows up once again to take Roary for a ride on the track. And now we're transitioning to a song, because there are songs in Roary the Race Car. Not like in every episode or anything, but they do happen every now and then.
Race me, race you, that's it. Race you, me too.
Anyways, after all that happens, a few other racers are now practicing, and Roary and Cece join in on it. Roary then wins the race and gains some fucking confidence in himself. Finally, it took him long enough. Anyways, that story was enough to get Roary to sleep peacefully. The next morning, Roary wakes up and then tells everyone to wake up, but they're all panicking because they're all afraid of other stuff.
I'm sure I'm gonna hit them barriers today. I just know I'm gonna crash.
So Roary decides to tell them the exact same story he was told, which doesn't really make much sense, but it makes everyone feel better. And that's it. Now honestly, this episode was pretty good. Kinda wish this episode had more focus on, oh, I don't know, the big fucking race they bring up in the episode. But apart from that, this was a pretty good episode. The second episode I'll be looking at is Roary cleans up his act. Roary, Cece, and Tin Top are splashing water on each other since it's a really hot day. They ask Maxie to join in, but he refuses. Then after they get scolded for wasting water, they take a run on the track to dry off all their water. But after taking the run, they're all dirty. Like, how the fuck did they get that messy? They didn't really go through any dirt or anything. All they did was just run a track, or just, run a lap on the fucking track. How? I mean, that probably wouldn't make them normally messy. Whatever. Since it's a really hot day, there's no other water left, and photographers will be arriving next day to take a picture of everyone, which isn't very good for the cars. So the three decide to go to Farmer Green to see if there's any water he can give out. But because Maxie's a selfish piece of shit, he decides he's gonna make sure that none of the cars get the water they need. So when they make it to Farmer Green, he gives him glasses of water and then explains how he can collect rain using a bunch of barrels and tubes so he has plenty of water. On their way back, Maxie once again decides to be an asshole and speeds past him to make a plan. After speeding ahead, he decides to fake himself breaking down. When Rory sees this, he gives Maxie the water and he chugs it all down in one go before speeding off. And after realizing it could rain later, Rory decides to use the idea of collecting the rain, so using things like buckets and all that shit. And later that night, it actually does rain, so everything's all good, right? No, it's not. There's no car shampoo to wash the cars. But thankfully, Big Chris's shampoo works just as well. Oh yeah, there's another song. I wasn't lying when I said this series had a lot of songs in it. When the photographers arrive for the last photo, they want Maxie out of it because he isn't shiny enough. And he learns not to be a jackass, and the others learn not to waste water like idiots. Honestly, this episode was also just genuinely great. This was probably the best episode of the three I'm reviewing. The final episode I'll be looking at is Big Chris flags it up. Marcia is sick one day and Big Chris steps up to substitute for her. But because he's never done this before, he doesn't know what any of the flags mean, so after being told what they mean, Rory says he could step up and help out as well. He then attempts to fill up Rory with All in All 2.0, and oh no, he spilled some of it. And for some fucking reason, I can't help this enough, he decides to use the flags to clean up the puddle of fuel. What a dumbass. Anyways, he decides to put the flags in the washing machine before filling up Maxie with the All in All, and the fuck was that? Anyways, the machine still isn't done with washing the flags, so Big Chris decides to use pieces of underwear and socks as a substitute, which, I mean, did you have a shirt or something at least? Anyways, Rory decides to stay out of the fuel test to help out. So during the race, Maxie decides to be a prick again to maintain the lead. So Big Chris waves the black and white socks around to try and get them to behave a bit more. But because he isn't using the actual flags, the cars don't understand and don't take it seriously. If you didn't wave both in each hand, they probably would have understood it more, Big Chris. Whatever. Then Drifter breaks down right by the track, being a potential hazard to other racers. Even though he's more on the inside lane and in the grass? Nah, whatever. So Big Chris uses the yellow underwear to try and alert the cars. But once again, they don't understand. But thankfully, once they get the memo, they'll stop and don't crash. Except for Tintop, because he crashes right into a wall. Anyways, a bit later, Marshall returns to congratulate Big Chris for managing the flags, even though he didn't use them. Now, I think this was the weakest of the 3 episodes I watched. Now, it's not like this one was bad or anything, it was still good. But I feel like Big Chris just using the flags to clean up that goddamn puddle of fuel was kind of bullshit. So, I reviewed the episodes. So now we come to the question. Is Roary the Racing Car a good series? Well, in my opinion, the answer is yes. I really liked the series. When I first started watching, I thought it was just going to be okay at best. But that wasn't the case at all. The show is surprisingly really good. It's well made, the stop motion is nice, the songs are catchy and sound good. There isn't really much to complain about this show. Overall, the series, in my eyes anyways, is kind of an underrated gem of stop motion, and I actually want to watch even more of it. But fuck you, Lionsgate, for only releasing one Roary DVD over here in the US. You assholes.